even it up. We will find out here shortly, but before we do, we want to take a quick break to give you some info. Our sponsor for the league this season is MythLogic. We encourage you to check them out. They build some awesome custom gaming laptops. You can find them at mythlogic.com or on Twitter or Facebook by just searching for MythLogic or slash MythLogic, if I can spit it out correctly. But also, we are going to be having some giveaways. As I can type that in chat here, there is a fancy thing that gives us all the info. Giveaway. If you go to SC2CTL.com/giveaway, last week we gave away an awesome Corsair gaming mouse. Or was it the headset? I can't remember at the moment. We gave away a awesome Corsair item last week from provided by MythLogic, courtesy of Corsair. And we will be giving you the first code tonight. We'll be giving away a total of 2 codes to enter you for those drawings. Next week, we will be giving away the next item. The dates are on those pages, so be sure to tune in to both get the codes and win your prize, although you do not need to be present to win. But Feardragon, the first code for tonight is going to be ice cream. So if you type that code in there with your email address, you will be entered, and you can gain additional entries by following the Twitters and Facebooks of the personalities that are on that page, MythLogic, Chairs for Gaming, myself. Each follow that you give, it will give you an additional entry. So I believe you can get a total of like 7 entries. And once you follow those people and items, you will gain those entries every time you put in a new code. So when we give you the second code this evening, if you follow those, you will get those number of entries again. So it is a pretty cool gig. Big thanks to MythLogic and Corsair for hooking us up with that. Awesome stuff.
Yeah, guys, be sure to check those out. I mean, why would you ever turn down free stuff? It's just amazing.
There's literally no reason to turn down free stuff.
Even if you don't want the free stuff, and I can't imagine why you wouldn't. I mean, it sounds like there's some amazing stuff being given away. You give it to a friend, and now you have a new friend. You give it to somebody who wasn't even a friend before, and now you have a new friend, I should say. And
friends are what makes the world turn, my friend. But going into game number 3 here with those codes given out, like I said, stay tuned. We will be giving out a second code this evening. Ice cream, reminder, is the first code. But what we're here for is StarCraft, and we're going to get back into it in game number 3. Representing Team Ascension in the third game is going to be Lucky, and Seed is going to be Bones. You said Bones was one of your favorites earlier.
Oh, yeah. So Bones is a really interesting guy because he is actually the team captain of Root Seed Academy. And I actually did have him on a show that I do called Breaking Out. But the really key thing that I can say about Bones is really funny because you kind of mentioned, like, you know, Seed has been showing some more defensive style games. Nothing super duper crazy on the offensive. And that is something that Bones loves to do. He loves to be really defensive and just have super solid play. In a lot of ways, he reminds me kind of Rain's play style, where he just really does a great job with any kind of defensive play. He mechanically executes everything really, really well and tries to inch out those advantages in the late game because he knows he can rely on his macro to make it and get that big advantage in the late game, even if he takes a bit of an early game deficit.
And it's also cool that a team captain is also contributing to the overall playing of the team. But going into the bios here, representing Team Ascension, as we mentioned, is going to be Lucky. He is a Grandmaster Protoss. He is a veteran of the semi-pro scene. He has been on teams such as Optic, Area 51, TQ, and Insanity. He was away for 9 months for Air Force training, and he is already back in the top 16 of Grandmaster, which is quite the accomplishment to walk away for 9 months and step right back in and say, yep, back. And he is considered one of Team Ascension's best players.
Oh, he is definitely a very, very strong player. And it just goes to show you, man, the Koreans, they all obviously have to go and do their service in the military and everything. This guy, he is doing the same thing because he's following the path of those Koreans. That's the logic I'm going to use on this.
Absolutely.
Why he's such a good player.
But you can really tell the people that are really passionate and good at the game when they can step away for such a long period of time and come back and just pick right up where they left off. Very cool to see those types of things. And his opponent this evening is going to be Root Seed Bones. He is Miles Donald, 19, from Ontario, Canada. He played casually for a while but got serious in 2012. and he achieved GM in 2013. He plays a heavy macro style, as you mentioned. He played for Team Nightmares, Triumph Esports, Clarity Gaming, and now is the captain of Root Seed. He made 3rd/4th place in Season 1 of the Breakout Invitational, being bested by Saravati. It seems like we may have someone with us that has something to do with that this evening. He won 1st in Golden's APM League tournament as well.
And he's honestly a really, really solid guy. And honestly, he's actually a really, really hard-working guy. So if you actually enjoy his game today, I'd highly recommend you go ahead and check out his Wikipedia page. Or sorry, Liquipedia page. I don't know if he has a Wikipedia page yet. Maybe someday. But his Liquipedia page, he actually updates it constantly with like replay packs and everything. Really, really hard-working individual. So definitely worth checking out. And of course, be sure to also check out Lucky. He's a really, really solid player as well.
With that, we're going to jump right on into the game. Representing the aforementioned Root Seed in the upper right-hand corner, wearing the color green this evening, it is the captain, Bones.
And his opponent, spawning down in the bottom left-hand corner of the map as the orange Protoss player representing Team Ascension, it is Ascension's Lucky.
First PvP of the evening. As a Protoss player yourself, how do you feel about PvP, the state of the game these days?
Okay, so Wingnut, I'm going to lay some truths out there, right? There are a lot of people who feel PvP is a coin flippy matchup. There are even a lot of Grandmaster players who feel this way. And I will tell you right now that you can get advantages with build orders in PvP, but the really, really solid players, it's not as much of a coin flip as people think. They can actually overcome those mild disadvantages and still win, even with the quote-unquote build order loss. And I think that also, I'm not as sure about Lucky how he feels about PvP, but I know that Bones also feels a very similar way. He definitely actually is really well known for going the same build in like almost every single matchup. He might vary it up in terms of how he reacts to what his opponent's doing, but for the most part, he feels very, very comfortable kind of going for the same thing. So I actually think that PvP is a very exciting matchup.
Definitely exciting. I feel like Protoss lends to the high APM, high control type players. Also, I feel like Zerg is kind of the same way. But more in the early game type of phase, I feel like Protoss can really lend to the really cool macro type control type wins. So like you said, I mean, even if you have those build orders that are quote unquote stronger, I feel like you can kind of over fix that by the right amount of control. But and we also like to throw around the term mind games, and like you said, throwing out the same build every time when you're in a series against the same person, a PvP every time, you're like, oh, are they going to do the same thing, or are they going to I've done 2 games in a row, so now I'm just going to go DTs and just catch you completely off guard. But both players doing their definite due diligence and scouting around, not wanting to let any shenaniganry happen.
Yeah, and Lucky is going to have a little bit of a lead. Bones scouting around a little bit extra just to check for any kind of crazy proxy shenanigans that could be going on. And this is pretty typical of Bones, as I was saying. I'm a little bit more familiar with his playstyle. Not that I don't love Lucky or anything. But yeah, he really does like to kind of play a little bit on the safer side in the early game, just in case his opponent's going for something a little bit crazy, so he can make it to that late game that he feels more comfortable in. But Lucky could actually be a little bit lucky in that situation, because if he decides to get a little bit more aggressive, PvP is a great matchup to be aggressive in. You can very easily end it with some nice one base aggression, and with the Twilight Council going down, we could very well see that.
Yeah, it looks like Lucky has a probe here at somewhere around the 12 o'clock position, just kind of chilling around, which almost always indicates a pylon of some kind, but Bones still being very active with his scouting, and there's a sentry coming out. Is it going to cross the path of that probe? He does see it, so anything that Lucky may have wanted to get done with that will be at least scouted, but it looks like that sentry is still on his scouting path there and is not going to chase it down. But a Stalker moving across from Lucky as well. And how much pressure is on Lucky here, being down 2-0 also?
I mean, there's going to be a lot of pressure, and the Stalker's actually going to come in over here, meet one of the Stalkers of Bones. They both trade blows, and then they both retreat. But, actually, Lucky's going to have to get out of there with that Stalker. But he's moving across the map with a second Stalker. His second probe, or I think actually it's the same probe from earlier, is also ready to plant on a pylon. With a Mothership Core out there, he definitely wants to put on some aggression.
Yeah, Blink coming down as well, so Lucky definitely wanting to get some action here and keep Bones busy while he's getting that down, but it looks like he almost wanted to catch that Stalker off guard a little bit, but Bones was able to get it back, or catch a Mothership Core. Sometimes you can catch a over-eager Mothership Core heading its way across the map. Oh, Hallucinated Oracle heading across. That's actually interesting.
Yeah, it's a really great move because Hallucinated Phoenix, awesome. It moves a little bit faster than the Oracle. That's all well and good. But you know what's scary? When you see a Hallucinated Oracle come in and you're not sure if it's hallucinated. So you run all your probes, and guess what? If you pull all of your opponent's workers off of mining for even like 5 or 6 seconds...
Is he going to bait a Photon Overcharge? He does bait a Photon Overcharge. Wow, so that's actually kind of a big deal there.
Yeah. I mean, that's what means that there's not going to be as much energy for Time Warps if he decides to continue any kind of Stalker aggression. I mean, it looks like Blink's going to be finishing up soon. He still has 3 gateways, but he has the Robo also added on for that Observer. So it's sort of an interesting situation at this point. What do you feel about how Bones is kind of doing in this?
Well, Bones is set up here pretty well, and Void Rays against Stalkers is always kind of a scary proposition, but there is Blink on the field, so that is sort of in the favor of Lucky, but I mean... if Lucky allows Bones to get that Void Ray count up high enough, I mean, Blink is not going to be all that useful, I don't think. But 1 to 3 Void Rays, if he can get in there and make a push with Blink, he can kill him down pretty easy and maybe get a little bit of an advantage. But I think Bones is starting to get ahead here.
Yeah, it is really, really interesting. I'm also kind of interested by the fact that Bones has gotten this robotics facility. He hasn't actually made any units from it. In fact... he hasn't even bothered to make an Observer. Oh, well, he's finally going to be making an Immortal for this. But, oh, hold on, I thought we may be seeing an engagement being teased at over here in the center of the map.
Yeah, it looks like Bones had just enough to make Lucky a little bit gun-shy, blinking back instead of forward to try and take out one of those Void Rays. But now as he moves in here, his reinforcement pylon is a long ways away, so he's not going to really have the advantage of being able to warp in additional units here. He's going to try and poke at this expansion to try and force a cancel, but I don't think it's going to happen. He does bait out the photon or the prismatic alignment, though.
Yeah, it's gonna be nice. He might have a small little window of opportunity to put on a little bit more aggression, but I think as you were saying, it's a poke. He's trying to see what damage he can do, and also get a scout out and see. Okay, are you still making Void Rays? Are you still warping in units? You have like say an Immortal popping out now, and he sees that Immortal. It's also revealing about exactly where Bones is at in his build. So now Lucky has the opportunity to react. And the reaction is actually going to be a Templar Archives.
Yeah, it's interesting. What do you think we'll be seeing out of that? Archons and Colossus eventually, or Storm for the Void Rays? I mean, Storm has been a little bit more popular, it seems like, in some of the games I've seen when you see players going for Void Rays, as it does do quite a bit of damage, but in the long run, I don't know.
Yeah, I think that for now, in the immediate future, it's probably going to be for Archons. Oh, God. Lucky, you're looking to be in a really nice position to maybe get some nice stock harassment in. But yeah, I think Archons make the most sense early on. In the later stages, if your opponent's Void Ray count does get a little bit ridiculous, I think that you're absolutely right. Psionic Storm, a definite necessary precaution that you need to have ready if the Void Ray count gets up to, say, like 6 or 7 Void Rays. Because, you know what, again, it's kind of what you were saying. You don't want to be fighting Void Rays with just pure Stalkers.
And Bones is throwing down his robotics bay here, so it looks like he is going to be working himself towards Colossus. But I do like the addition of these Void Rays out here, just to, keeping the variety of his units quite high, so it actually kind of keeps Lucky on his toes. He can't just go blink Stalkers, which kind of looked like what he wanted to do there for a little bit, but now he's going to be having those High Templar be warped in, but those High Templar are so slow, it really kind of impedes the mobility of the blink.
Yeah, it is a little bit interesting. I think that, again, those High Templar is going to be morphed into Archons. He may keep one High Templar around just because feedbacking the Mothership Core is one of the most fun things in the world to do in a PvP. Just because you kill off your opponent's Mothership Core, maybe shut down a little bit of high ground vision, maybe even also like stop the Time Warps from going down. So we could be seeing that, but Forge is actually completing its upgrade, and Charge is going to be coming out for Lucky. So it's almost certainly going to be a Charge-led Archon style with a couple of Immortals mixed in.
And I really can't stress how much I really like that in this matchup, especially when he's going for the third base here. You can tell he's kind of feigned the aggression, and I like that also because it's kind of kept Bones on his toes, and Bones really hasn't been able to push out because of it, I think.
Yeah, Bones definitely does have a much less mobile force with, I mean, a couple of Void Rays, some Immortals, some Sentries mixed in. I mean, these are not units that can really deal with the mobility of these Blink Stalkers, which I have got to hand to Lucky. He's been doing a great job keeping them alive and on his opponent's side of the map. He really hasn't taken a lot of damage on them. In fact, I'm not even sure if he's actually lost more than like one of them.
Yeah, the unit's loss is definitely double for Bones what it is for Lucky. Only 150 resources lost, so that's about one Stalker. And there is a pylon here. There was a probe from Bones that just barely poked into the third base of Lucky, saying, "Oh, you saw nothing here," and then ran off to the corner of the map to throw down a pylon, which will eventually lead to some warp-ins to harass that base. But Lucky still does have the pylon in the back, which I'm actually not sure that Bones knows about. No, he doesn't, looking at the vision.
Yeah, both these players have actually proxed the pylon in the exact same locations. Neither of them really getting the opportunity to scout out. Bones, of course, again, he has a less mobile force. Now Colossus being added in, another fairly immobile unit. And kind of makes sense that he doesn't really want to move out. These Stalkers from Lucky have been fantastic, and look at this. They're moving into the natural expansion. They're going to be able to take out the cannon and maybe even be able to get out a little bit more damage. A Photon Overcharge also does get forced out. It managed to pick off one Stalker, but I love what Lucky's been able to do with these Stalkers.
Yeah, absolutely. And if he would have juked up to the north there just ever so slightly, it's possibly might have been able to get down that Colossus, but he did the smart thing and just headed out, doing a little bit of damage, and also, like we said earlier, just kind of making his presence known and keeping Bones on his toes. But now 3 bases on the field for both players. Looks like the upgrade advantage is going to be heavily in the favor of Bones here, starting his +3 attack, while +2 is getting close to finishing up for Bones. Charge finishing up as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think you kind of swapped those. Lucky actually getting the +3 attack, which is really very typical for this kind of Charizard Archon style. You definitely want some really solid upgrades. And here's the thing, Lucky's moved across the map because he knows this style does sort of have a limit on how late in the game you can take it. If your opponent gets up like 5, 6, 7 Colossus, your charge lots just don't do nearly as much as you want them to. The Immortals are still great, but there is a timing you have to hit, and Bones has actually already kind of walled off this third location, which is one of the most important things you can do against the Charizard Archon style.
Yeah, these charge lots are just going to run their faces into these gateways while the Colossus are able to weight them down. But Photon Overcharge is baited out there, but Lucky, seeing that he's really not going to be able to get in there, just decides to pull back. But the Stalkers are continuing to poke around, though, and getting some additional Zealot kills here at the opening to the natural expansion, and still does not lose one of those 5 Stalkers, but that one charge lot trying to be a hero.
It's trying, man, and it almost manages to get one of them. But you know, I like the the warp-ins of Zealots for Bones, just because you force your opponent to micro a little bit more. Of course, Lucky has a difficult time microing against a lot of Zealots with those Stalkers and also moving his army. And now he's trying to make the retreat, but look at this. Bones actually might be able to cut off this army, but I don't know. What do you think about this positioning?
There's a little bit of a scary move out for Bones here, but those Zealots are absolutely disintegrating here. There are the Void Rays there as well, targeting down the Archons, but those Immortals doing huge damage now as the buffer for Bones is gone, so this Colossus can be taking the damage. Looks like those upgrades from Lucky really paying off.
Oh god, the Time Warp just was able to catch so many of those Colossus. They were able to be snagged up by those Immortals. That Immortal count is actually ridiculous. Bones now reinforcing it with a couple of these Charge Zelts, knowing that there's really only 2 Archons left over to deal with this. But is it actually going to be enough?
I'm actually surprised that Bones hasn't, through the course of the game, done much harassment on the third base of Lucky. He's kind of been left to his own devices this entire game.
Yeah, Lucky is looking so strong right now.
Third base of Bones here is under a huge attack by a huge number of Zealots, and that's going to be enough for Bones as he says GG.
And it looks like the comeback is real. Team Ascension finally putting their score on the board, bringing it 1-2, but they still do have a bit of an uphill battle in front of them.
Yeah, and you know, honestly, neither of these teams are slouches. Definitely respected in the community and respected by a lot of people. So, you know, how do you feel that that Lucky would have felt going into that game, saying, "Okay, we're against Seed, coming to this game, we're down 2-0. The weight is on my shoulders because if I lose this game, we're down 3-0, and we almost assuredly are in a tough spot. But if I win this game, we're back in it."
It's always a really, really rough situation because, you can imagine like how it feels when you're playing in a solo tournament or something. But when you're in a team league, then you have not only the pressure you put on yourself, but you have the pressure that your teammates sort of put on you, and knowing that if you kind of lose in that situation, you also sort of let them down. And I think that Lucky did a great job kind of pulling through for his team.
Also, I wanted to get your thoughts too as an additional Protoss player. Those 6 stalkers that were, he researched Blink basically just for those 6 stalkers, and they were alive for about 80% of the game up until that last big engagement. In your opinion, what effect do those have on the entire meta of that matchup between Bones and Lucky?
It was enormous, and I'm so glad that you pointed out so many of the really, really important factors of that wingnut, because you think about it, it's not just about, there's 6 stalkers and they managed to do a little bit of harassment, because honestly, at the end of the day, they didn't really kill off like 20 workers or anything. They didn't kill off a Colossus. They killed off maybe a couple of Zealots and like a Photon Cannon. But the real damage that was done, and this is something that we were kind of talking about, is that Bones had a really hard time putting on any kind of counter pressure on his opponent. And the reason for that is because of those Blink Stalkers. And if he ever moved out, he always had to be wary about the Blink Stalkers harassing him. So he would have to leave some units at home or something. But if you leave the units at home, what if those Blink Stalkers are also in the engagement then? Well, now you're in this situation where you have less of your army for that big engagement on your opponent's side of the map. And you end up losing it. If you lose a lot of those very, very expensive units, you're just kind of probably going to lose the game. So those Blink Stalkers played an enormous role in the victory for that last game for Lucky. And I think he did a great, great job with it. That's honestly exactly what you want to be doing with those like 6 Blink Stalkers. Because again, if you lose those Blink Stalkers, if you're going for Charizard Archons, you want to spend all those Warp Gate rounds warping in more Zealots, warping in more High Templar and everything, because Zealots, for the most part, they don't really cost any gas, and you end up having a lot of minerals when you're sitting on 3 bases. You're not getting up like a ton of Colossus or anything, so you definitely want to be able to just warp in every single opportunity you get, and you don't want to have to warp in more Stalkers. So he did a really great job with that.
It's exactly that kind of opportunity that really terrified me down to my core when they started talking about a Blink nerf, because I just, like we were talking about earlier, I feel like Protoss, especially in PvP, is a race that really depends on control, and that's one of those situations. And Blink's such a cool mechanic. But at the end of 3, it is going to be 2-1 in favor of Seed Gaming over Team Ascension. Going into game number 4, will Team Ascension be able to keep their winning streak of 1 going to even it up? But going into this game, it is